Looks like this is the official start of the November Ace Q&A.
Hey, look at that. Is that a new card?
That is a brand new card.
It looks new. All right. Well, hello, everybody.
We have a lot of stuff to talk about as we come upon the eve of pushing 6.2 to everyone. And internally, the dev team will be starting on 6.3, but we're not going to talk about that.
Nope. Well, all right. Introductions first. Shall we go through the intros?
Yeah, we should do introductions. I'm Thomas Blair, Design Director for Crowfall.
Todd Coleman, Creative Director.
And I don't think I'm actually on screen, but Ray is here in the background. So if y'all have questions, you just let me know. I'm here to field those.
Ray, the man behind the curtain.
Oh, there I am.
We have Ray in a glass container to crack in case we need questions answered.
That's right.
Tiggs and Debbie Sue and Emily off screen as well. So, Mr. Blair, this is we did a kind of an off schedule Q&A to talk about disciplines and all that stuff. So now that stuff has made it to the test server, and we're starting to get through the mountain of bugs so that you guys can actually play it. And it seems like it's going pretty well. I've been getting a lot of really good feedback from people on how it's been going. And I just want to remind everybody that, this was our first iteration. We still have a lot of additional changes coming. We need to add a lot of minors. There's a couple holes in the trees that we need to fill. We still have to do the adjustment of the calculations on the stat blocks and how impactful all the attributes are. There's a whole bunch of stuff still coming, but I'm glad to see that we're making progress there. And I think that I really believe that when it's all said and done, you guys are going to be much happier with the result, and glad that we did that. So I had somebody ask recently on Discord if that was the last of the major changes, and the answer to that is no. Not ready to talk about them yet, but we do have a couple more significant things like that coming. But I will say I'm delighted to say that list is getting smaller and smaller. Like if you look at the checkbox of all the things that we wanted to have before we released this game, stretching all the way back to Kickstarter, that list is getting mercifully shorter by the day.
All right. So why don't we talk about live in the test servers, Todd? I think that's where we shift over to now.
All right. So first thing first is, you guys know we've been on test for a while. We've been getting a pretty good amount of bug flow on all the discipline and power and talent tree changes. We were basically in a model of getting about 60 bugs a day. I think for the last week, it was about 60 new bugs a day that would come in and they get turned around. Over the weekend, we actually saw that drop to around 40, I want to say, a day, maybe 30 to 40 a day. And then last night, I think we only had about 20 that came in, which is really cool. That means we're starting to, we've turned the corner on this build to where we are still fixing the same number, but we're finding less.
I think the two big pieces of tech feedback we're going to want is clearly the functionality for the reward system. Does it work? That one's kind of easy because it either works or it doesn't. And then the rewards that we give out are made better over time, right? We just want to make sure that the tech is working. There's not a lot of balance in that. The 6-200, the changing of the keep walls to not be damageable by players is a rather significant balance point that we're going to need to balance. So prior to this, players were able to just actually ignore a lot of pieces of siege equipment and just bring a lot of people and blow up the walls with player powers. That's not a thing in 6-200. You are going to need to bring siege equipment to damage those walls. So we're clearly in feedback mode on this one. Is the health too much? Is it too low? What needs to happen to the siege equipment? So we're definitely going to be listening to feedback on the actual siege stuff, because that is a pretty significant change that's probably going to require us to tweak some numbers. So that's the really big pieces of siege that have changed. Of course, we fixed bugs in the strongholds, but that is the big one. Is the change from being able to damage walls with player powers.
Yeah, and somebody just mentioned that we need to do a balanced pass on the wall, the health of the walls and the siege equipment and the tree and the wards and everything. I do know that there was a lot of discussion about that internally. I don't know where it fell. Like, I don't know if that ended up making it into 200 or if that ended up in 300, but I do know that it's on the list. It's just one of the thousands of things that are on the list that we need to shift our focus to. So now that we're starting to get through the list of features and content requests, we're going to really start to concentrate more on balance and polish.
Yeah, and we also mechanically switched some of the things. Like we were sticking like tons of barrier buffs on all the walls when they upgraded. Now we just do it through a stat change to increase its armor, which gives it the same effective health at the end of the day. So we've kind of optimized some stuff too on the back end that we want to make sure is functioning properly. So that's kind of the big changes in the siege area. So that's kind of where we're going to need some feedback on what happens, as well as I do believe we've got our Unity crew on hand to watch the siege, the first siege window tomorrow night. I'm sure Debbie Sue will be putting out a media blast on that, but they're going to show up and watch the siege to try and get some more feedback on how their optimizations. They've got a different client. They're going to be looking for all the stuff that they've been tweaking on their custom client to see if it can help us. So please participate when Debbie Sue puts up the announcement for that particular siege.
And then just a quick update on that. Those guys have been working with us now for the better part of a month. I think they've been around. We've had basically a team of 5 engineers from Unity working with us for about 3 weeks, and we've found a significant number of items that we think could be impactful in terms of client frame rate. A fair number of them are going to be longer. It's going to take longer to fix. We couldn't just immediately do them, but some of them we are able to get in sooner rather than later. So I think that the payoff for that effort will extend well beyond just the actual period of time that they're in-house. And I say in-house in quotes because, of course, they're not actually in our office. No one other than Gordon is in our office right now.
He's the one man on the ship there.
Yeah, he is. Yes, massive office with just Gordon in it.
Yeah, so. And to be clear, the optimizations are only on the Unity developers' clients. We haven't integrated that stuff into the base package yet. Again, we don't want to risk at where we are on 6.2. We're trying to get this thing as polished as possible so we can get it to live as soon as possible. And we're not introducing new risk by adding a bunch of stuff at last minute. We've got 6.3 for the next thing, and all the new stuff is going in there for our next milestone.
Yeah, so, I think there were some changes that made it into 6.2. I just don't, I off the top of my head, I don't know which ones made it in and which ones got pushed. I think the bulk of their work is going to be coming in 6.3.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a couple knob changes in 6.2, but all of the new stuff is in 6.3.
Cool.
And it looks like, as I look through our write-up here, there's a reminder that time is running out. Don't forget to purchase your Crowfall Collector's Edition from the store. And check out the cool Crowfall merch available. Click on a sweet merch button. Okay. I didn't realize we had a sweet merch button.
It always cracks me up when you read out the script from Debbie Sue, because you sell it so well.
There.
Go and click the sweet merch button. It just cracks me up.
We're gonna have to do better rehearsals.
Sure. We're gonna have to do a rehearsal.
No, it's not the rehearsal. You're acting like I'm not doing it on purpose. Like, this is not a mistake here. This is me being me.
I'll put hearts and exclamations next time.
You want me to sell it better? Oh my God, guys, you're not going to believe how great this Crowfall coffee mug is. It's amazeballs. You got to get one. Get it now. Get it now. Get it now. Is that good? Was that better, Debbie Sue?
Much.
Did I nail
appreciate that. You did.
Okay. All right.
Crowfall.com/CEPAC. When they go there, they will see where it says sweet merch. And they will get the coffee mug.
Sweet merch. Okay.
Sweet merch.
Hashtag sweet merch. Oh, killing
All
us.
right.
Killing us.
So, one of the things that didn't make it into 6200, and I think we want to call this out, was the Crowpedia. Right.
Oh,
One of the it was just too big at the last minute, and we just didn't have time to cram another feature into this milestone and make it on time. So we did the smart thing and we pushed it into the next milestone, but we clearly know that there's a need for such a thing. Why don't you talk about what it is, Todd?
All right, so basically it's effectively an in-game, it's almost like a wiki page, right? But it's an in-game UI that you can use to understand how all of our runestones connect. So if you have a particular build idea that you're going for, it gives you a way to say, hey, I want this particular major discipline, but I want to do it with this race. How do I get there? Or, hey, what race would be good to be able to give me access to this? So it basically is effectively a big database where you can turn on filters for all the different runestones, all the different powers, all the different classes, all the different races, and you can mix and match to do build construction. So I think it's going to be a big deal. I actually was super disappointed that we couldn't get it into this last milestone, because I think that the system we put together is really cool, but it's pretty obscure. Like, it's a pretty deep system, right? So being able to figure out all of those combinations is definitely a part of the metagame, right? To me, we know the system's starting to work when people are playing our game when they're not online, by thinking through options while they're driving their car or doing whatever else. So we're not quite there yet, but I think we're actually going to get there, and I think the Crowpedia is a pretty big piece of that puzzle. So that's a cool one. That is going to be a big what is it? What do they call those features that are just convenience?
Quality of life.
Quality of
Quality
life.
of life.
There you go. Quality of life feature.
Yeah, and speaking of that, I think one of the French guilds put together a talent builder right before we went up on 6.2. So it's also cool to see what the community is building as a way to check out new builds and things like that.
I actually haven't checked. Has Strathor done one yet on Malachi.org? Because I know
I have not seen one there. I've only seen the French Guild's one it was actually an interactive talent builder.
Okay, cool. Well, Strathor's will also be amazeballs. I have lots of faith.
Okay.
I'm sorry. It's Scree on Malachi. Strathor had just talked in the chat right as I said that, so I got my names wrong. Sorry about that.
You got your S's messed up?
Yeah, I sure did. It's because literally I looked over at our chat just in time to see Strathor say amazeballs. Naturally, that of course filled my brain and threw me off. Sorry about that.
Yeah, apparently Crusader did a really good domain page. I haven't checked it out yet. I will, because I like to see those things. It's always great. It's kind of amazing what the fans build when they just sit down and zone out for 3 days. They're like, hey, look at this cool thing I made. And you're like, holy crap, that's awesome. So, awesome. So I think we move into our questions from the forums now, which sound good for everybody? Nope. All right, here we go. Will the 6.2 changes fix the racial bonuses to crafting and harvesting, so there's clearly not one best choice for each? We'll answer this one, which is basically a lot of those benefits were designed to help out the early game and just be kind of a cool little bit of icing on the cake. But as you gain more stats in that, they kind of fade, and as you hit caps, they may hit it slightly earlier. Also, the human racial and the half-elf racial of the extra minor discipline used to be a far bigger dealer for crafters, but now it's not, because minors and majors are now purely combat things. So those should have diminished in their importance in the harvesting as well as the crafting game. So again, they're kind of cool. They shouldn't define the character as in I have to play this one anymore. So that's kind of the hope. This one is one that we should probably talk a bit about, which is how do you balance the powers with the feedback that the players are giving? So
that's actually good. This is an inside baseball, but I think it's probably good to explain that there is a methodology there, right?
Yeah, and every night, every afternoon, Ray is watching the forums and he's writing down every piece of feedback that you guys put up.
Yeah, and it's a giant pile of stuff. It really is. And so getting through all of that does take time. So if you posted something, I saw it, and it gets added to the pile, and we can only chip away at that, as fast as we can. As Blair said, I have to first find the stuff, collect it, and then people will, some person will say it needs to be this way, and another person says it needs to be this way, and then another person says it needs to be this way. So you get all these views on a variety of things, and you sort of pull those together, and then we need to actually talk about it. So, some of those discussions can get kind of long about the best way to deal with something, because, you got the ripple effects, right? So you change one thing and it can have, massive ramifications. And then there's also tech issues, and it's not as simple as, yeah, just do that. It's never that easy. I wish it was that easy. It's just never that easy. But we make our way through these things. So if you posted stuff, it's there, it's on the list, and we just might not have gotten to it yet, but we are making our way through this massive list. And as Todd said, the numbers that are coming in are getting lower and lower as we address more and more, and we're fixing things. And I do know our very first priority was getting the bugs fixed first. Like, there was just things that were broken. Like, we got to get the things working, or else the feedback's not going to be accurate, right? But now it feels like, a lot of those are getting fixed, and we're getting more and more into feedback of, like, hey, this thing isn't cool enough, or, really everyone always picks this. I'm like, well, that's not good. I want you like, oh, wow, which of these things am I going to pick? And so that's where we are now. And so those things are starting to make their way through in our balance meetings every morning. So it's fun to see this stuff come in, and changes are happening faster and faster now. So that's really good.
Yeah, and I just want to point out, I think this is one of the largest community-driven efforts to kind of tweak a game that I've seen in my entire career. Usually it operates the other way, where we just keep serving you various dishes and is that one good? Is that one good? Is that one good? And it's far slower. What's really cool about this process is, if you guys choose to partake, much like voting in the real world, you have a voice in this project, and we are shaping the game to this feedback, which means you have a very large handle on basically the direction of the ship and how we're shaping these classes. So please participate, and don't take it lightly, because we certainly don't. We give every piece of feedback its due consideration, and there is really no better way for you to participate in the game that you want to play long term than by giving us feedback right now. Now, this is going to continue into 6.300 and beyond, because we're just going to keep adding powers and things and more disciplines. But this is the beginning, and we're trying to set a good foundation now. So this is how the process works going forward as well. And I anticipate a lot of the 6.300 work on Mark and Josh will continue to be power stuff. So we're going to keep moving on that.
Yeah, there's definitely plenty to carry us through into 6.300. No questions asked. There's a lot. Sure. It's a lot of good feedback. So
I will actually say one thing about feedback is, I think that what I've noticed watching Ray engage with people is that specific feedback is actually very valued. Like, saying like, hey, power number 372 sucks. Okay, I mean, it's good to know, and it does mean that we'll take a look at it. But it's not as helpful as power 372 sucks because of this reason and this reason, and here's some thoughts that I have for how it could even be better. That if you guys play this stuff actually more than we do, so we do. I know it probably, some of you are like, I don't know if they really listen, but you would be surprised how often literally Ray is like, 30% increase. That sounds good. What do y'all think? And that's where we start the conversation. Now, it may not stay there, but at least that means that your voice on the forums or in Discord or whatever has now actually been echoed into the group meeting, and we have powers meetings every day. Like, every single day we have a powers team that gets together and they talk about all the new stuff that's been brought up. So not just providing the feedback, but more specific feedback is actually great. Now, if you write a dissertation that's like 4 pages on why power sucks, honestly, that's probably not going to get brought up. So I would be concise and right to the point. But more specific is better. General things of this thing over here is bullshit, that's not very helpful. So anyway, just a little bit of feedback for you to trying to help hone that. But it is cool watching the engagement right now with the community and seeing how quickly we're able to iterate on these changes based directly on feedback from you guys.
And what you'll notice on the forums, there's actually a method to the madness. We have the QA group also go through as you guys report bugs, and they like every post that they've read. So if you see a like by an ACE developer or QA member or whatever, you know that we've gotten that feedback/bug, and it's either been worked into a ticket or into a feedback page so that we can talk about it internally before we actually take action on it.
Oh,
now,
I know I definitely haven't been clicking the like button. I'm just going through them.
Jump in really quick because QA also, we posted different symbols that QA is using for with the bugs. So it's either that it's been reproducible or they need more information. So you can look for that. There's a legend on top of the bug form.
And then I saw a chat go by. Like I know Nim had been posting a lot of stuff. And I think every time we open a new thread, he posts it. He's like, hey, some acknowledgement. I know I don't respond to every post in the feedback, but I got your feedback. And actually, we started working on Myrmidon yesterday. So some of that stuff has made its way through. You're hearing streams, you want some acknowledgement. There you go. So we have definitely started working on it. And I got every single one of your posts. So they weren't lost. I saw them. Just letting you know, someone hold me. Sorry, I just saw the chat. We are making progress. And, we recognize what's going on. We see it again, as always, very, very much appreciate the feedback because as Todd said, you guys are in here really, really playing with this stuff down to the minutia of what's going on. And that is excellent. And while there are some very large posts, I do read them, every word. And I might even condense them like, okay, we'll talk about this or we'll talk about this. So that might actually get broken up into 10 or 15 different pieces for us to go over, which is why sometimes it takes a long time to get through everything, but we will get through them.
So one other thing I'm going to put a request in for is as you guys go through these talent trees, if you notice that there are nodes that are just not appealing, you're just like, hey, here's a node and it's this and nobody buys it. Or it feels like I'm only buying it to get to the thing that's past it, definitely let us know that, right? Because the goal here was that we want hard choices, but that means the reason they're hard is because I want all the things and I can't have all the things. Like that was the philosophy. That doesn't work if some of the things are like, well, this one is amazing, or I can take this one, which is crap. Nobody takes this one. Well, that's not a hard choice. In fact, it's basically a non-choice. So one of the things we do know that we need to do related to that is attributes, right? Just the raw numbers and stuff like that. So this is something we've been talking about internally quite a bit is, what are the health curves? What benefits do you get out if I add a point to con versus a point to strength? Those kind of things. We're going to make a pass over that soon as well. We kind of have known in the back of our minds that we'd always have to get back to it. But I think that in general, sometimes the stat blocks are not as juicy as we would like them to be for that reason. But I definitely, that's feedback that we would like. If there are individual nodes that you guys are seeing on talent trees that you're just not as interested in buying, call them out and let us know, because we'll take a look and we'll see if we can bring everything more into alignment.
Yeah, and we have gotten the feedback about stat blocks, as Todd mentioned, and so that's known. That's a known thing. We can't get to it in 6200, but that is something that we're definitely looking at. No questions. We know, like, people have said, we don't like this for this reason, which again is great to hear that. The whys are super, super important. And so we've heard that. It's just, that's, as Blair said, we're going to be moving through on all this stuff through 6300. And that's a big part of what we're going to start looking at over there. So we definitely heard that. But to Todd's point, if there are other powers and things like that that are just, it's terrible, we don't want it, that sort of fights against those hard choices, So when I hear stuff like, man, I want this power and I want that power, or you should move that one closer so I can get all the stuff I want the most, very easily, then I'm like, great, we have hard choices, So you're going to want this thing and you're going to want that thing and you're going to want all the things, but you can only have some of the things. Bam, that's a win. You'll try to build with some of these, try to build with some of those, maybe mix some of these. I want to see that happening. But, again, to Todd's point, if they're not all cool and you want them, that breaks, right? And so We're slowly making these changes. We look at them like, this isn't cool enough. Let's tweak that a little bit. This is too powerful. Let's move that down just a little bit. Again, to try and get things as even and as overall desirable as possible. That's the goal. Like, that's the goal. Once we get there and all the stuff's relatively, in order, then we can start talking about, well, what if we added this, or what if we did this, or what if that's the next step. And again, with your feedback, I think we're making great progress. I've been really, really happy with the feedback and the changes that we've done. So I don't know, it feels really good to me. So I'm excited about it.
Cool. We did just get a note, by the way, that was echoed by a couple people, shifting gears over to EKs, saying thank you for enabling nobles to be able to beat them. We have more EK stuff coming as well, too. I didn't know that when it made it in. I'm delighted to hear that it has. So many times it's like you guys are upset about something or commenting on something or suggesting changes on something that I know is already changed, but it hasn't quite made it out the pipe. So it's good when one finally does. It's very popular. So I'm sorry, I took us off into a complete tangent. So
yeah, I mean, it was great to talk about our process and how we do this stuff. And it is changing fast, because it was funny because somebody was like, "Lol, you haven't looked at Reckoning yet." Well, the fix to that went out yesterday, which is the change to the ultimate powers, no longer giving barrier, because that was a thing that we weren't happy with, because we put in all these great new barrier things, and all of a sudden we have these ultimates that are just giving everybody 30% of their health as a barrier, and it was never intended to be that way. So we changed it to damage mitigation. So that should be on test today, maybe, or maybe later in the day. We'll see. But let's get on to our next questions. What kind of engineering nightmare would it be to mesh all the zones together into one map? Now, this was just this was a question because somebody didn't know how the tech works, and they were like, "I like games that are all just one big map." So what do you think of that, Todd?
The answer is it would be a nightmare, technically, to do. It would also go directly against performance, right? Like that, at the end of the day, part of the reason that we have things segregated out is so that we can isolate players into groups of basically less than 200. I think right now the server, we have the cap set at 175 because that's about where we start to see issues at the higher end. Like if you get all those players in one spot at one time, the client is lower than that, right? So right now the server is outperforming the client. I feel pretty comfortable that the client's going to get up to a place where we're a lot more happy. And I feel very comfortable that the server is going to end up being much higher than the client. But that said, I don't expect that we're going to have situations where we have, 1,500 people or 2,000 people all coalescing in the same area into one fight. Honestly, I'm not sure that would be fun either, because the more players you have in an area, the shorter and shorter time to kill becomes, right? If you put 1,000 people into one area, I think that everybody would basically instantly explode, like the head popping scene in The Boys. I think it would be bad. So in general, we tried to optimize to that number, to that kind of 200 number. If it ends up that the number is 250 or 300 or 400, that would be great. So at that point, we could make the worlds bigger and make fewer of them. But going into the architecture design with an expectation that we will be carving players up means that we're not going to work ourselves into a corner where we just misjudged or we can't optimize and now we can't ship the game. One thing that's really beneficial about our architecture is we generate these worlds, which means that technically we can generate a world of whatever size we want. So at the end of the day, if it turns out that both our server performance, client performance, and just general user population, which we only kind of control, depends on how many people show up. If those things all play out in a way that a bigger world is better, or bigger worlds in a smaller cluster are better, then we'll do that. If it turns out actually, the answer is we need to keep at the same level of zones right now, but we want more worlds per zone or more zones per world cluster, we can do that. So the nice thing about world generation is that we have the capacity to make those changes as we find out more and more as we get closer and closer to launch. So there you go. In general, there's also flow issues as well. Massive open worlds tend to end up with people more scattered out, which is not ideal. We've actually done larger worlds in the past, and we've shrunk them down on purpose because we felt like the players were too sparsely populated. They were spread. There's too little butter over too much bread. So we'll take a look at it and keep watching it, right? As player population increases, as optimization increases, if there's an opportunity for us to make the worlds a little bigger, we probably will, but there is a limit. There is a kind of upper limit that we don't want to go over.
Okay. The next question. What resources are increased by gain resources passives? For example, Champion has 4 pools. They've got a rage pool, they've got a hate pool, they've got soul power, and they've got stamina. Do they all increase? So any of our passives that say they increase your resources are talking about your primary resource pool for a class. The secondary resource pools are generally something that was added for special attacks, like Knights have a version of it, Confessors have a version of it, the Champion has a version of it. Those ones typically were put in for a very specific mechanic, so we didn't want to throw out the balance of that mechanic by having a ubiquitous gain resources, throwing a bunch of extra resource in there. And Soul Power, which is what powers your ultimate, basically you get credit for that if you're in combat. So as long as you're in combat, hitting someone, being hit, or healing, you're going to generate Soul Power. And that just happens on, you don't see it, but it's happening passively in the background. I do know that there was an issue with, we recently made some of our ticks, the rate that our things tick at, change in 6200. And there was a couple lost ticks happening in Soul Power. Mark pushed a fix for that, I believe, this morning. So that'll probably be showing up on test either tomorrow or later tomorrow afternoon. And then stamina. Stamina is primarily, it's got some harvesting ties as well as combat ties for how long you can sprint. We really don't give a lot of stamina restores. There's a couple classes that have, hey, it gives you 20 stamina back. And then in harvesting, we have procs that can give it back. But again, it's not affected by a lot of these passives. So pretty much your primary resource. Okay, that's our Ace Dev Q&A questions. And it looks like we have a couple of questions from the forums. So this is Debbie Sue and Tiggs, I believe, put this up as a general, hey, what questions do you want answered? And this one, the first one is, why do bows need arrows when quivers can do the exact same function and every other similar item, toxins, Froxweaver crystals, use a simple durability item with no consumable variant or special unlocks?
So, so what we wanted to do with the limited ammo, right? Archery is one of those disciplines that we thought would be cool to make more universal. Like we thought it would be cool to. This is all going back a couple years, and we wanted to put some limiter on it though because we didn't want the game to just turn into nothing but everybody is an archer, like every character is an archer. So we thought, well, we were also trying to get a nice mix of different mechanics. You'll notice that even in our class design is we try to have all the classes have a very unique like flavor and mechanic that with them. So we thought, all right, this will be a good one. Let's start with limited ammo because that'll be cool. And then we realized the classes that really, Ranger, for example, that we really wanted to actually be able to focus on this, that was too much of a limiting factor. So we decided, all right, well, let's come up with a quiver instead for them that basically makes it less of a factor for them, but still a factor for other players. So that's kind of why. I mean, at the end of the day, early on, we made a bunch of design calls, and we are going back now kind of through those one by one and deciding whether we like whether they ended up or not. This is not one that, to be honest, I think I've thought about in at least a year. So I'm certainly happy to have feedback if you guys ultimately just decide that now that we're going to launch, there's a mechanic that you just really, really don't like. Well, bring it up and we'll talk about it. And if, sometimes there are reasons that we put things in that you guys may not recognize and may not agree with, but we feel like are necessary to the game. For example, durability in general. Why do my items have to decay? I hate that. Well, you might hate it, but we need it because if we don't, the economy simply can't fire, So there are things sometimes when we simply can't we can't accommodate a change. But there's other times when we can. So if it's something you guys feel strongly about, bring it back up. We're happy to take a look at it. Now is the time. Now is the time when we're going back through and looking at all the original decisions that we've made over the course of the last couple of years. And we're saying, okay, here was an experiment. We tried it out. Did it turn out where we wanted it to be? Yes or no? And if the answer is no, like with our talent trees and our disciplines, it wasn't quite where we wanted to be. So we decided, let's take another cut at it. So I'm happy to look at all of them.
Yeah, and
I just can't promise you that I'm going to change them or that I'm going to agree necessarily with your assessment, because I have to look at everything at the meta level, at the highest level, and you guys are often down in the details. So sometimes what you'll see as a problem in the details, I look at and say, actually, that's a problem up here at the meta level, and vice versa. So
yeah, and I think there's also the progressionary element in there as well, Todd. In a lot of cases, we like to put some progression in there so it feels cool when you get cooler things, right? It's all about giving you as many cool things. And if we give you the tank or the mech suit right out of the gate, you probably won't appreciate it, and it won't feel as cool because it was like, well, I don't have a baseline to baseline my experiences off of. All I have is the mech suit. So everything should feel like the mech suit. So that's definitely, we'd like to build in progression where we can, not make it super hard, but just so you can feel something is getting better over time. Okay, next question. What's your plan to bring in PvP hotspots outside of siege timers? At the moment, we suffer from what to do during non-siege timers. There's no one farming mobs apart from waiting for timers for the bosses.
Yeah, so I think part of that is a balance, right? Is we really over-indexed on fort production to try and make sure that part of the loop would work. And the answer is it does. It works, in fact, too well. It overwhelmed everything else in the game. So we need to take another whack at that. Caravan runs are supposed to be something you can do. And then there's a synergy piece that I really would like to get in with the outpost. So right now, the outpost are only for grabbing and then holding for conquest points, which means they're not a very good driver. So just like the forts are on a cycle to produce materials, I would like to see us add to the outpost a container or chest that is really optimized for 1 to 3 people, right? It's just loot drops effectively, but those popping every now and then would give me a reason to make a run out to all of my outposts to basically collect that stuff, even when they're not contested. Because right now, if I take an outpost and nobody's contesting it for 6 hours, there's no reason for me to go back to it in that 6-hour period. If it had a chest that was popping stuff that's for individuals, not really for build materials, but at the individual level, then that would give me and my group a reason to make runs out there, and I think it would kick off a little bit tighter. It would actually make people fire. So that's something that I'd like to do as well, is I'd like to get that in. And we also just need to make a general balance pass over harvesting for harvesting and crafting as well. It's some of these systems that got put in. This is fairly normal in MMOs, by the way. Systems that got put in earlier, new systems come along and they are the new shiny thing, and so they get new cool stuff and even better rewards that drags people to come and try them out. And the old systems, just over time, they fall behind. And you can definitely see that with harvesting right now. So there are some things I'd like to do, but they aren't really as much new systems as going back to old systems and saying, okay, is this system working? It was intended to serve this purpose. And if it's not, why not? And then trying to fix it.
Question 3. Has Unity found any improvements in their findings? What type of improvements can we expect in the coming updates? If so, when will we start seeing the improvements, fixes implemented?
On the Unity side of things?
Yeah.
Yeah. There was actually a fair number, right? So some of them are optimizations dealing with like what we show, how much we show, how often we show it. Like I'll give you an example. The Banewood trees, for example, were very, very heavy assets. And it turns out they didn't have a LOD attached to them. It was just an oversight. Like their LOD never got assigned to them. So the Banewood tree could be in the distance on your screen like this big, and it was just as heavy of an asset as if it was right in your face. That was just a mistake, right? The game is so big now. We have, tens of thousands of art assets in the game at this point. So mistakes like that will be made, and being able to run through and prioritize and organize and say, okay, here's all the objects you have, and here's the things that are going to be the most impactful. There's a whole round of art stuff, culling stuff, there are some optimizations that are just like, hey, the shader could run faster, or hey, the way you guys organize your data, it would be quicker for us to render it this way versus that way. I think that the laundry list of changes that we've gotten from these guys is something on the order of 40 or 50 things. So some of them we're addressing now, and some of them we haven't even gotten to yet. But I do think that it's going to have a nice, solid impact over time.
All right, Crow Appreciation Rewards. As always, we like to thank you for your feedback, participation in making this project better, helping guide where we're going. If you are a backer by the 24th of the month, you'll get that month's rewards, plus you get all the monthly rewards to follow. And our November Crow reward is the Dragon Sigil and Belt Totems. Ooh, we also have a cool emote. So we just got the GDD written for emotes. So emotes will be somewhat in the future. The items will be put into the entitlement system. And in tribute to Hero the First Crow, wear this golden carved sigil or dragon totem on your belt and feel the power of the legendary Serpent King. Ignite your crow spirit with a 2% damage bonus. So, again, thanks everybody for showing up. Thanks for your support. Thanks for listening to all of us. Thanks, Ray, for showing up and giving us his angle on how this is progressing. And Todd, do you have any thanks to give? You know what? You could talk about all the Twitters and the things, because I didn't mention.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, follow us on the Twitters and the Facebooks. And I think we even have an Instagram, though I'm not on that because that's for the young kids. That's for you youngsters, and Debbie Sue, you youngsters and the marketing professionals. All right, I think that is it for this time. Next time, so I did mention earlier that we've got a fair number of other things that are coming. It's not a fair number. It's a small but impactful number, right, of things that are coming. Next time, we were going to talk about another one of those kind of flip the table things that is coming. That'll be in early December. And in the meantime, Dreg should be coming up here in about 10 minutes on test, unless that's changed since we started this Q&A. So please jump over there and help us find those bugs, because the sooner the bugs are found, the sooner the bugs are fixed. The sooner the bugs are fixed, the sooner it can go live. So thank you guys always for your support. Don't forget to get your Amazeballs Crowfall mug.
And your 2% damage bonus for your totem on your belt.
Cool.
Thanks, everybody. Go out and vote, and we'll see you next month.
All right. See you in game.